and welcome to my driving instructor channel, where we're going to be looking at the skills that you need to become a driving instructor or to become a better driving instructor, and we'll also look at the subjects. So it's going to be a series of short videos concentrating on, in one series, on the skills, i.e. the day-to-day things that you would do every lesson, such as giving route directions, route planning, setting goals, for example. And the subjects will look at the, like, your roundabouts, your parallel parks, your emergency stop. So I'm going to go through, so making videos so you can tune in, watch, make notes. There'll be worksheets that you can download and complete, and hopefully it'll really help you when you get in car with your trainer, so you kind of hit the ground running. So you've got all the background knowledge and understanding, and then you can just go and apply the skills to the lessons that you're delivering. So without further ado, let's just sort of share some of those ideas. So let me just grab this one. So yeah, so if we just look at this, skills and subjects. So the kind of skills that I'll be looking to cover in this series, the one we're going to do today is agreeing lesson goals. So other things like giving route directions, the level of instruction, when to adapt the lesson, etc, etc, fixing faults, lesson planning and structure using the ROMPS guide, keeping control of the lessons using dual controls, giving demonstrations, giving briefings using visual aids. So everything that you would be using on a daily basis is the skills. And then if I just scroll down here a little bit, then we can just sort of look at some of the subjects we'd be covering. So no surprises there, you know, things that you'd cover on a beginner's first lesson, from the cockpit drill to moving off and stopping, junctions, T-junctions, Y-junctions, roundabouts, all of that, use of mirrors, use of signals, speed, all the manoeuvres will be in there, emergency stop, etc, etc. So that's the plan, and if you've got any comments, you can leave me comments and I'll sort of take on board those and add those skills or subjects in. So without further ado, let's get started with what we're going to cover today. So I'm just going to pop that slide up there. So today we're going to look at goals, setting goals, agreeing goals with your pupil. So things to consider, and I'll go through and I'll talk about these points as we go through to sort of help you develop these skills. Like I say, when you get in car with your trainer, these things you can look up, read on, and I'm going to guide you on that today. So okay, so skills, agreeing the goals. So points to consider when you're developing this skill. So basically it's going to be based on the needs of your pupil, not necessarily what they want. So you've got to weigh up what the pupil needs versus what they want. So what is the difference? Well, when you're agreeing goals, you want to do something that your pupil actually is going to benefit from. You know, how do they really know what they need at this point? You know, they might have ideas. You could ask them sort of things, what do you want to do today? And they might say something that's a little bit above their skills, and they might struggle with that. So as the instructor, it's your skill of knowing what that pupil at that particular moment in their journey of learning to drive will actually need. So for example, if they were saying, well, I'd really like to, I don't know, do roundabouts today, it might be because their friend's done it and that they think, oh, they might be a bit behind and that's what they want to do. But this particular pupil might be struggling with steering, and would benefit from a lesson or part of the lesson, a few minutes focused on steering to develop that skill, or changing gears, for example. So they might need some more control-based training rather than a specific subject, because like I say, the pupil, how do they really know what they need? That's your skill as the instructor to identify those needs. So often the needs will be based on how the pupil's performing. So by looking at their drive, identifying any faults that they make will help you focus on their needs, because yeah, when learning to drive, like anything you're learning, it's in stages, and you don't want to jump to this level before you can do this bit. Like the saying, you don't want to run before you can walk. So you need to build up in layers to give you the skills to do the things that they might want to do. So hopefully that made that clear. So it's definitely based on what the pupil needs, and that's your job to kind of identify that, and not always what the pupil wants. So next point there, often you can use this on what happened last lesson. So when you're going to do your standards check or your part 3, think about how they did last lesson on the drive to the test centre that morning. Quite often the pupil might be feeling nervous and they might be struggling on a certain aspect. So focus on that, and then you'll be on the right line, because when you're being marked on your ADI part 3, it really is focused on what that pupil needs, and that will become evident when they start to drive. Other sources you could look at to help you sort of identify the needs of the pupil are a reflective log. So if your pupil at the end of last lesson, if you're keeping a reflective log from them, encourage them to do that, and then you'll get some inspiration about what actually was happening last lesson, what you can be doing this lesson, and that will really help. So you can either have a paper-based reflective log, or you can use an app. There's apps now you can use where the pupil can sort of go away and do that in their own time, or do it at the end in the car, which is good, because you're really getting the people to hold a mirror up to themselves and sort of think, well, how are they doing? How did they feel? What was going well? What wasn't going so well? So that's a good source when setting goals around the pupil's needs. We need to talk about what is client-centered. There's a lot of talk about that you need to deliver a client-centered lesson, and often this is quite widely misunderstood amongst ADIs and PDIs when doing their standards checks or part 3 tests. So what does it mean? It basically goes back to the first point. It's client-centered is around what they need and not what they want. So we don't want to have a lesson that's instructor-led, i.e. something you want to do. Often we hear of instructors that have planned a lesson 3-4 weeks before their test, and even before they've picked a pupil, where they want to do roundabouts because it's their best subject, and that sort of has cut the pupil out of the whole equation there. So now that is an instructor-led lesson. We don't want any preset lessons as well, that we're going to do this in 5 minutes, and then after that we're going to do this, and we've got to keep to this schedule, because that just isn't client-centered. We don't know how your pupil is going to react to training. They might excel and you might need to be raising the bar. They might be struggling and you might need to lower the bar. So you're always looking to adapt and meet the needs of that pupil. So that's client-centered. Client-led is something we want to avoid, and that's like doing what the pupil wants. So for example, saying, what do you want to do today? I want to do roundabouts. Okay, great, let's go do roundabouts. And they're so out their depth, it's not a safe lesson, learning's not taking place, they're struggling rather than learning. So we want to avoid client-led lessons, instructor-led lessons, we need to get it on what the client needs. That's a client-centered lesson. Other things I want to talk about is when setting goals, there's some models you can use, like SMART goals, grow, stretch and not struggle. So let's talk about some of those. So let me just find the appropriate page. I've got a web page open for this here, so just bear with me. Okay, so let's start with the grow model. So yeah, we've got that up. So this is Sir John Whitmore. He developed this in the late 80s, early 90s, and he's got a website that will explain it much better than I can. So I'll put a link in the description so you can check this page out yourself on what the grow model is. There's also a little video that you can watch. Only takes a few minutes. But basically, in a nutshell, what does it stand for? What is the grow model? Well, it's a coaching model to sort of get your best out of your learners to perform. And what does it stand for? Well, we want to set a goal. What do they want? So their ultimate goal would be to pass a driving test in most cases. That's the big goal. But a smaller goal might be just to get better at doing roundabouts today. To do multi-lane roundabouts, for example. That could be a goal. The R is for reality, looking at where we're at now. So what is the reality of our situation? So, they might think, you could use scaling for this. So they might want to be better at roundabouts, more confident at getting gaps into roundabouts. And the reality of the situation, their confidence, for example, they feel like they're about a 3 out of 10. That's where they are now. And, a goal could be to move them up to a 4, 5. So reality. O's are options. So the options to get there. You, as an instructor, you can sort of present different options to your pupil about how we're going to do that. And if they're picking something a little bit higher than their level, well, then you can say, well, okay, you want to do motorways, great. In order us to get to those motorways, there's certain things we need to do to get so we're safe when we do that. So then you can lay out a roadmap, a plan of different options on how to get there, building them up so they will get to that goal. So as an example. So and also giving responsibility to the learner. So what options they've got to get there. Like if they want to pass their test in 3 weeks. Well, the options are to do that. The reality is that you're not ready now. The options to get you there, if you increase the frequency of your lessons. So maybe if we take 2 lessons a week. That is an option to get there, or an option might be to put your test back. So that's looking at options. And the will are often described as the way forward. What will we do? How are we going to get there? So that's like your plan. So that's the GROW model. You can look at that into more detail on this site. And also John Whitmore's got a book just on my Amazon here. Coaching performance. Just make that a little bit bigger. So this book here, as you can see, it's in its 25th anniversary. So I think they're on the fifth edition. So that's a very popular book for coaches. So very good. Let's go back. So we've looked at the GROW model. I also mentioned SMART. A lot of you might have heard of the SMART model. So what does that stand for? So here on the SMART model, we've got specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So we've got our SMART goals. And it's so important when setting goals to be very specific when setting those goals. Again, let's go back to roundabouts. We're going to do roundabouts. It's a very broad goal. Let's narrow that down. So what is it about the roundabouts that you feel you need to work on? Because they might be very good at their mirrors and their timing of the signal. They know what lane to go in. But the bit they might struggle on would be, or maybe their speed on approach, judging gaps, so they don't hesitate. That might be the thing that they're really worried about. They might be worried about selecting the correct gear when they decide to go, what gear would be an appropriate gear. So we need to find out, we need to be specific. So rather than just saying, let's do work on roundabouts, let's get better at roundabouts, let's be more specific about what it is we're trying to achieve with the roundabouts. Okay, so that's specific. And as you can see there, we've got all the W questions, who, what, when, why, where. Measurable, okay, you could use scaling. How confident do you feel at getting gaps at the moment? Well, 3 or 4 out of 10, where would you like to be? Is that achievable? So we've got the A, is that achievable? Making sure that your goals are relevant. So let's say you've got someone struggling, I don't know, let's say they're doing T-junctions and, rather than setting a broad goal of we're going to be doing your MSPSL routine, if they're struggling with steering, well, let's make let's get onto that, so make it specific, and that is relevant. Let's work on your steering, because once we get that, those junctions are going to get a lot better, so make sure they're relevant and time bound. Yeah, how long are you going to dedicate to the lesson to do that? I mean, if you was doing the emergency stop, you're going to spend 2 hours doing that? Hopefully not. Maybe 2 or 3 goes, move on. So we could spend 20 minutes on the emergency stop, and then we'll go and do something else, or like a bay park or whatever. So just to give some kind of timeliness to it. And also that works on specific objectives in this lesson. Now we might have a 2-hour lesson, and we're going to do lots of little goals, and this could also relate to more broader of the big goal of I want to pass my test, and the time bound. When do you want to do that by? That's a good question to ask when your pupil starts. Like what's their expectation of the driving lessons and the course, because they might be thinking this would all be done and dusted in 10 hours, and which might not be realistic. So if we just sort of find out those things initially from our pupil, and when they want to do it by, then we can sort of manage their expectations and sort of give them a realistic, smart goals. Okay, so that's smart. Let's just go back to my little sheet. Not that one. That's it. That's the one we're on. So we've talked about smart. We've talked about grow. I put there stretch and struggle. So when setting goals, we want to stretch our pupils. They want to be challenged, so learning will take place. We don't want it too easy, so they're just bored and there's not much learning taking place at all. But then we don't want them to struggle. We don't want them out of their depth, because once they're struggling, they're not really learning. They're probably stressed, and it's all just sort of going over their head at this point. So we definitely want to stretch them, and this is something you want to be thinking about for your part 3. Just recently, last week, we had a chap that passed his part 3 on his first attempt, and the examiner's comments were that it was really good. You took your pupil not out of their comfort zone, but right on the limit. They were doing meeting and clearance, and the pupil was test standard. And before the test, we were thinking, cool, what does he need? What would really stretch him? So the plan is at 8:30 in the morning, go up near a primary school where there's lots of parked cars, and it stretched him. He needed it. If it was anything easier than that, I don't think the result would have been quite there. And the examiner was really impressed that he'd done that. And the examiner said, you know what, this wouldn't work for most pupils, but you really understood your pupil and what they needed, and that was his level. And it was a little bit different to what the examiner had seen. It was definitely a challenging lesson, and he scored him very well for it. So yeah, it's a stretch but not struggle. Okay, what does the pupil want to achieve by the end of the stage? So that's a good question. What do they want? What will success look like with the roundabouts? What do you want to get better at? What do you want to achieve? Well, I want to achieve sort of so I can judge a gap, that I don't hesitate. I want to feel more confident with that. I want to know what gear to select on the approach, so I can work out the speed, the speed of the car, the engine speed, and sort of think, yeah, that's a second or a third or a first, because I struggle with that. So that let's find out what your pupil wants to achieve, and then that's nice at the end when you're reflecting, sort of say, did you achieve that? Go back to your scaling. Where are you now? Did you achieve your goal? And if they do, you've done a good job. That lesson worked. Gaining agreement. So throughout all of this, we're not client-led. We're not telling our pupil what is going to happen. It's agreement, and we need to hear it from the pupil. We need to. You can't just. Yeah, I get it. When you go to your part 3 and you stand and check, yeah, you know what you're doing. You've got a plan. You kind of have worked that out with your pupil. But when the examiner's sitting there, he doesn't know, and he wants to hear from the pupil how they're feeling, why they want to do it, rather than the instructor just blurting it all out and tell. It's ask. Good. So scaling, we've talked about that. So how confident they feel, you can use scaling. When setting goals, we want to be offering value for money for our lessons, and that's a big factor that examiners are looking for. Whatever the lesson rate is in your area, £28, £29, was that 1 hour worth it? If you went out for a meal and it was 30 quid and you just got a starter, would you want to pay? So it needs to be value for money, and this is why we're saying stretch. It can't be too easy for them. It's got to be good value for money. Learning's got to take place. Okay, adapt the lesson as soon as it's appropriate to do so. So we often talk about levels of instruction, whether you're guiding or giving a full talk through to prompting to independent, and you need to adapt as that lesson goes through quickly when it becomes appropriate. So if your pupil's struggling with steering on those roundabouts, then adapt the lesson, focus on the steering, give them the help they need, maybe give them back to a talk through or whatever it is, but adapt and react to the pupil, because then you are meeting the needs of the pupil, rather than a fixed plan that you've written down before. I'm not saying don't write a plan down. Do plan your lesson, do think where you're going to go, do think how long it takes to get to these places, to make sure that the lesson you've planned will last about 45 minutes at the moment, or an hour when the COVID's lifted, so that you're not trying to bite off two more than you can chew. It's a skill to plan lessons. When you learn, I remember when I learned, I would write things down and plan. But then as you get it into your subconscious, you turn up when you're experienced, you turn up to lessons, you talk to your pupil, and the plan is formulated together as you speak, and then you go and do it. And that's really where you want to be. So do plan lessons, think about it, write things down, but then be flexible, which leads me to the next point. So have flexible plans, not rigid plans. Be prepared to change. If you don't, you'll fail. Simple as that. You will fail if your pupils sort of going that way and you're going that way, sticking to the plan rigidly. You are not going to pass a Part 3 or standards check. Simple as that. What have we got next? Goals. Break things down into bite-sized chunks. As I've already said, so this is being the specific part, isn't it? So don't take roundabouts, take it as MSPSL, and what bits of MSPSL are you looking at? So the example I used, the judging a gap, well, we're into LADA there, aren't we? The gears, for example. So so break things down into small, manageable chunks for your pupils. When you do your Part 3, it's only an hour or a 45-minute lesson. How much can you realistically achieve in that? So don't try and do too much. Have some good, smart goals. Work on them, and if they get done, then move on. Raise the bar, move on. If they struggle, then you can just adapt and change. So don't try and bite off too much than you can chew. So that's sort of my points. There'll be some questions. So I put these in the description. So there's some questions there just to check your understanding. And these are maybe things you could fill out and take along to your training when you're getting cards, sort of say, I've understood that. And the resources that I've used today. So I've put the 2 links for the Grow and the Smart, the Smart Goals, and also some other books that I haven't mentioned. I'll just go back to that web page. Bear with me. So I already mentioned the Coaching for Performance. Other books that would be good to get on the coaching side is Who's in the Driving Seat? The Driving Instructor's Guide to Client-Led Learning by Jed and Claire Wilmot. Very good book. We've also got Practical Teaching Skills for Driving Instructors. That includes the Grow modelling that. There's a section on goal setting and that goal setting. So very good. This book deals with skills. It deals with subjects. So that's very good. And from the same author, John Miller, we've got the Driving Instructor's Handbook, very good book, as well as the other ones that you'd expect to have as Know Your Traffic Signs, Highway Code, DES. So for the coaching side, we're really looking at these top four, which would be really beneficial to you. So that really concludes my little chat on setting goals. Actually, it doesn't actually. There's something else I wanted to talk about. Where do we go to? Where do you go to find out what examiners want? What do examiners want when you're doing your part 3 or your standards check? So you probably know this already. So we can look at the ADI 1 document. So if you Google that, ADI 1, this will come up. And if we just go down to the contents, so we've got the part 2, the part 3. We're interested in part 3 at the moment, so we'll just go on that. And if we scroll down, you'll see a marking sheet, which I no doubt you're all... Oh, look, before we get to that, there's a reflective log, so what went well. So you could use that as a template. What didn't go so well today? What would you do to improve? Any notes? That's a good template for a typical reflective log. There's the part 3 marking sheet. And let's go down to the competencies. So the one we've been dealing with today, setting goals, agreeing goals, really fits in with this competency. The first competency on the sheet under planning: did the trainer identify the pupil's learning goals and needs? And in here we've got areas of examples of things that demonstrate good competence. So these are these bullet points here. So let's just quickly sort of read through those. Encouraging the pupil to say what they want from the lesson. Don't tell them. Ask them. The examiner needs to hear from them what they want to achieve. Yeah. If in the early learning process, ensuring there is understanding about responsibility and managing risks. Risks is managed throughout the whole lesson. Okay, so you're always responsible for risk and managing that and making your pupil aware. What if we do this? What will happen? That's really a subject for another video. Asking questions to ensure understanding. So ask, don't tell. Don't assume that your pupil, because they were good or they knew what MSPSL was last week, that they know what it is this week. They might have forgotten. So ask them, don't assume. Checking understanding as the lesson progresses. So, are you okay now? Are you judging those gaps better? So how are you doing that? Oh yeah, I'm using the blockers. Oh, okay, right. So let's hear from them. Don't tell them, you're good, you're using the blockers now, you're much better. Ask. Listening to what the pupil is saying. So active listen to what they're actually saying. Are they looking confused? Look, next point, taking note of body language. So listen to what they're actually saying. I sat in on a lesson the other day, and it was going to be funny enough, roundabouts. I talk a lot about roundabouts. I'll have to talk about something else on the next one. But yeah, I sat in the back, did a lesson observation, and it was about roundabouts. And they'd done T-junctions the week before the pupil. They knew about MSPSL. They felt quite confident. And the instructor said, so, good question. So what level of help would you like from me? How confident do you feel? And the pupil said, well, I'll have a go, because they were going to go to turn left round the block on some roundabouts. So the pupil said, well, I'll have a go at that. I think I'll be all right. The instructor then said, okay, so I'll give you a full talk through. Didn't listen. So instructor led. The instructor had a preset plan of what he wanted to do, that he wanted to give a talk through and then go transition to guided, prompted, and then the independent if the pupil got it. And so if you're going to ask a question, you've got to listen to the answer and see what the pupil do. You've got to manage risk, so you have to set that up so it's safe. You've got to understand the limitations of your pupil and be in control. I'm not saying that. but yeah, listen to the pupil and the body language. You know, they might be saying, yeah, I'm fine, but their facial expressions are saying that they don't get it. You know, or you ask them a question, you're fine with that, aren't you? And they're like, yeah, I think so. So ask them another question. Do you understand? So tell me how you're going to do that then. Like what, you know, it's just find out if they understand. So let's just have a little look at the examples of where the competency is lacking. So making assumptions about understanding or experience. So you can't assume just because your pupil was good at roundabouts or a Bay Park last week that they're going to nail it this week. You can't assume that. You've got to ask them how they feel, what they're going to do, and don't make assumptions. So the examiner, when he sits in the back, he's in got a good advantage over you because he doesn't know that pupil, so he can't make any assumptions about the pupil. You can't sort of fall back and sort of say to the examiner at the end, oh, you know, but my pupil knew that, or they normally do that really well. Well, they obviously they could have done, but they're not doing it this week. So you need to have that understanding and ask the pupil and respond to what they're doing and showing you as to the level it's going to be. So if they were fine with roundabouts this week and they're not this week, then lower the bar, help them out. You've got to adapt the plan. So so don't make assumptions. Failing to note negative or concerned comments or body language that shows discomfort, as we've already said. Undermining the pupil's confidence by continually asking questions beyond the pupil's knowledge or understanding. So don't belittle them, don't make them feel silly that they don't know the questions. The questions have to be at their level. They've got to have some kind of knowledge rather than just sitting there guessing, you know. So let's say MSPSL, they've forgotten what it was or they've never heard of it, and you're saying, so what does MSPSL mean? And they're like, or I don't know, is it? I don't know. And they're struggling. You just help them out, you know, prompt them. Don't let them wriggle and feel bad that they don't know the answers, you know. Think about the levels of questions you're asking. Next one, pushing the pupil to address issues that they are not happy talking about unless there's a clear need, such as identified risk or safety of a critical issue. As it says, don't push a pupil when they're not happy about talking about a particular thing. Yeah, you never know. They could have known someone that's died in a similar situation, and they don't want to be pushed on it. So respect that and think, okay, do you know what? Moving on. Okay, so that really concludes sort of the resources that you need. So this is the DT one, just to remind you. Use that. This falls in line with, just have a look at this, the national standards. So national standards for driver and rider training. You know, if you haven't seen that, you should be checking that out as well, because all these documents, the government documents, all fit together what the examiners are looking for you to be successful and become a driving instructor. Or, if you already are one, be a grade A driving instructor. Okay, so that concludes my little video, and I look forward to doing the next one soon. So I'll see you then. Thanks.